And that was a giant waste because he works for Israel already. So, Randy, we're all sick of your terrorist sympathies towards Israel. They have committed 75 October 7th. Their civilian kill ratio is 83%, worse than Hamas, worse than any terrorist organization. They have murdered 256 journalists, more than all other conflicts combined. They murdered 104 people today, including 46 children. They burned them alive. And we're sick of Israeli terrorism, and we're sick of people like you.
When I was growing up, my old man used to say, "You can always tell exactly who a politician really works for by looking at who they absolutely refuse to criticize." Today, we're watching a sitting U.S. congressman prove him right by looking straight into a camera and defending the slaughter of innocent civilians for a foreign government's war of civilization. That is exactly what Florida Republican Randy Fine just did on national television, having the absolute nerve to call progressive immigrants barbarians inside the gate, while he cheers on mass casualties and conflates millions of civilians with terrorists. These frauds love to question the patriotism of anyone who demands systemic reform and a better life for the working class here at home. But the second the foreign lobbying checks clear, these bootlickers sell out the American people without a second thought. If you believe truth over access actually means something, and you are sick of corporate puppets gaslighting us while they empty our pockets to fund endless wars, hit that subscribe button to join the movement. I'm Silas Miller. This is Miller's Mandate, and we don't let moments like this slide. Now let's get into it.
I want to bring in now a Florida congressman, Randy Fine. Randy Fine, welcome to Uncensored. What is your view of Mamdani? I think you want him deported, is that right?
I do. Look, I think Mamdani lied in his naturalization application. He did not share he was a member of DSA. He did not share his affiliation and his love for the five Muslim terrorists. And I think that was dishonest. And I don't think he should be a citizen. I think that needs to be investigated, as we need to do for many people who've come in over the last 30 years. One of the most fascinating things about this election in New York is Mamdani is losing overwhelmingly among those who were born in the United States. His only chance of becoming mayor is because of those who grew up with values other than being American. And I think that's something that should alarm everyone.
But the way you phrase that, if I can pick you up on that, what do you mean? I mean, you have to be born in America to be an American. Is that your position?
No, but by the way, there's a reason the framers of our Constitution said that to be president of the United States, you had to be born here. There is something about growing up here, going through your childhood, being inculcated with American values, becoming part of that melting pot that made America great. When my family came here over 100 years ago, they came here because they loved America, not because they wanted to change it. They wanted to become part of the American social fabric. But what you see in New York is people who have come here not to become part of America, but to change America. And that is, there's nothing wrong with America, and there's nothing that fundamentally needs to be changed. This is the greatest country in the history of the world, and we have too many people coming here who do not believe that, starting with Mamdani himself.
You said yesterday that Cenk Uygur, one of our panelists today, is an invader. What did you mean by that?
I think it's a great example. I actually talked in that post about Mamdani. I talked about Ilhan Omar. I talked about the gentleman you recognize. These are all wealthy foreigners who moved to the United States and then constantly talk about how bad it is. He made a post saying I should be deported to Israel, that I have dual loyalty. My family's from America. I was born here. My parents were born here. Most of my grandparents were born here. My relatives that came here over 100 years ago came because they were desperate to be part of the greatest country in the history of the world. They did not come and then go on constantly about how bad it is and about how terrible it is and about how things need to change. If folks want to come to America, they should love it, they should share its values, and they should want to add value immediately. And far too many people who are coming do not share those values, and I believe it is a threat. The barbarians are no longer at the gate. They are now inside.
Wow. So you're calling Cenk Uygur a barbarian. Well, given he's here, let me bring him into this. Cenk, what is your response to that?
Yeah, no, I don't mind, because I agree that there are barbarians inside the gate, and that's Randy Fine. Randy Fine is a sick terrorist sympathizer. In fact, if he wants America to do terrorism on Israel's behalf, he has said we should nuke Gaza. That's killing millions of innocent children and human beings and civilians. But he doesn't care. He only cares about Israeli lives. By the way, the Israelis have murdered now nearly a dozen Americans in the West Bank. No accountability from our government. And people like Randy Fine say we owe Israel. We owe Israel a genocide. We owe Israel $300 billion. We owe them no accountability at all when they kill American citizens. They had a pervert Israeli government official that came here in Vegas and tried to rape our children, and we let him go. That's insane. Randy Fine, are you asking for the sick Israeli government to return the pedophile so he could face justice here? No, Randy Fine represents Israel, not America. Everybody knows that. He also said we should starve all the Gazans. So he's right. There's a sickness inside our government. AIPAC and the Israeli lobby have given to 90% of Congress. They've given him $500,000, and that was a giant waste because he works for Israel already. So, Randy, we're all sick of your terrorist sympathies towards Israel. They have committed 75 October 7th. Their civilian kill ratio is 83%, worse than Hamas, worse than any terrorist organization. They have murdered 256 journalists, more than all other conflicts combined. They murdered 104 people today, including 46 children. They burned them alive. And we're sick of Israeli terrorism, and we're sick of people like you forcing good Americans. I love this country. I didn't come here to be a occupied territory of Israel. I came here because I love America and the freedom and the equality and the justice that comes with it. If you think your grandparents who came here were not loyal to America, that's your business. But no, most of the people that come here come because we absolutely love this country and not Israel. Go serve. Why don't you go to the Knesset, brother? Everybody knows you love Israel and you despise Palestinians and you love Israeli terrorism. Why don't you move to Tel Aviv already?
Okay. All right, Cenk. Let Randy Fine respond. Randy.
Well, thank you, Piers, and thank you for the surprise debate. I actually enjoy that. Look, there's a concept in Islam called taqiyya where you're allowed to lie in advance of your political views. And you just got a great crash course. All of those things were nonsense. But the notion that I am more loyal to Israel than I am the United States is part of it. Israel is fighting a war of civilization on our behalf. The reason we need a Jewish state of Israel is because of the Muslims that surround it. And so I stand with Israel because I believe Israel is fighting the same fight that we have here in the United States, the same fight that people like Mandami and Cenk, wealthy Muslims who move here in order to change the complex and the nature of our country, are going to do it. And I won't apologize for that. I am very proud of my views. I'm very proud of my faith. I'm proud to be the first member of Congress in the history of the United States to wear a yarmulke, which you may be able to see on my head. And I know that drives them crazy because we're not supposed to do that. But they gave me the nickname the Hebrew Hammer for a reason, and I'm not going to be afraid to use it.
But Randy Fine, when you said I don't give a shit, hang on, Cenk. Randy Fine, when you said I don't give a shit about Gazans, were you proud of that statement?
Well, I think the context there is Gaza attacked Israel on October 7th. Of the thousands of people who streamed across the border to kill every man, woman, and child that they could, many of them, thousands of them, were not, quote unquote, card-carrying members of Hamas. And so when you start a war and you are losing the war, if you do not like what that is doing to you, then you surrender in that war. Gaza chose to be the enemy. Gaza chose to attack Western civilization. And no, I didn't care what happened. It was my view that if they didn't like it, they needed to surrender. Something, by the way, they still haven't done, because yesterday the Gazans killed another IDF soldier in a place that even under the peace deal, they are allowed to be.
Why do you call them?
I don't care historically about the Germans.
Randy Fine, but I've not had actually any guests. I have to be honest here. I've not had any guest who has used the phrase Gazans rather than Hamas, given it was specifically Hamas that perpetrated the appalling terror attacks on October the 7th. It is Hamas that has the governmental power still in Gaza. It's not the Gazan people. It's not the civilian population. So why are you deliberately conflating Gazans in totality with Hamas when Hamas numbers may be 40, 50,000 maximum out of 2 million?
Because that is a propaganda lie. I'll give you 2 points. Number one, thousands of the people who streamed across the border on October 7th were not members of Hamas. That has been well established. Thousands of people came across the border who were so-called civilians. And second, polling just came out today. Polling just came out today that said if an election were held in Gaza today, Hamas would win overwhelmingly. Does that mean every Gazan supports Hamas? No, it does not. But to try to differentiate the two attempts to imply that some small percentage of Gazans support or like Hamas. That is not what the data suggests. And we should not allow us to say these two are completely different, Gazans and Hamas, because they are not.
All right. So
I know this clip goes back a few months, but the mandate doesn't sleep on this stuff. I had to bring it back to you because the absolute rot we just watched is still festering in the halls of Congress right now. And nothing about this system is going to change until we rip the mask off these people. What we just witnessed from Randy Fine isn't just an embarrassing meltdown from a bought and paid for corporate puppet. It is the entire far-right establishment playbook laid bare. And we need to dissect exactly how these frauds operate, because the implications go way beyond a shouting match on a cable news show. The dual loyalty, gaslighting. Let's start with the most glaring piece of psychological projection in modern political history. Randy Fine looks dead into a camera and accuses progressive immigrants, Muslims, and advocates of having dual loyalty and being barbarians inside the gate. He claims they hate America. Why? Because they demand that our tax dollars stop funding a mass slaughter and start funding our own communities. Meanwhile, Fine openly admits he views a foreign nation's conflict as a war of civilization on our behalf, explicitly defends the mass casualties of innocent civilians, and acts as a human shield for a foreign right-wing government. Cenk put it perfectly. These clowns take massive checks from groups like AIPAC and the defense industry, and then have the unmitigated gall to call working-class Americans invaders for wanting their government to actually represent them. It's an absolute joke. They project their own sold-out loyalties onto the very people trying to save this country from corporate and military-industrial capture. The delusion of a perfect America. There was a line in there that should make the blood of every working-class American boil. Fine says, "There's nothing that fundamentally needs to be changed. This is the greatest country in the history of the world." I want you to pause and think about that. I remember sitting at a kitchen table watching my mother cry over a stack of medical bills that a predatory insurance company refused to cover, knowing it was going to wipe out everything she had saved. That is not a statistic to me. That is the lived reality of the American working class. When a bloodthirsty bootlicker like Randy Fine says nothing needs to be changed, what he really means is that the system is working flawlessly for him and his donors. The system works perfectly for the defense contractors making billions off the bombs dropped on Gaza. It works perfectly for the private equity firms buying up single-family homes so you can never afford a mortgage. When progressives like Zohran Mamdani, or anyone in our movement, fight to change this country, we do it because we believe housing, healthcare, and a living wage are non-negotiable human rights. We don't hate America. We hate what the corporate class has done to it, the blood economy. And then we get to the darkest part of this clip. Fine explicitly erasing the humanity of the Palestinian people. He refuses to differentiate between Hamas and Gazan civilians. He justifies the deaths of children, journalists, and innocent families by painting an entire population as legitimate targets. He literally says he doesn't care. Understand this. That level of dehumanization isn't just bigotry. It is a business model. It is the psychological conditioning required to maintain the military-industrial complex. If these politicians acknowledge the humanity of the people they are bombing, the gravy train stops. If they admit that the overwhelming majority of casualties are civilians, the working-class taxpayers of this country might finally demand that our billions of dollars stay home to fix our own crumbling infrastructure. They want you divided. They want you angry at the immigrant, the Muslim, the progressive. Anyone but the millionaire politicians who are legally bribed to keep you poor, sick, and distracted. This isn't just about foreign policy. It is about who owns your government. We are being bled dry to fund atrocities abroad, while our own people sleep in tents on the streets of the wealthiest nation on earth. If you are tired of being gaslit by frauds who put defense contractors and foreign lobbies ahead of the American working class, then you are in the right place. We are building something here that the corporate media refuses to touch. If you believe truth over access means something, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and join the movement. I'm Silas Miller. The mandate answers to the people, and we are just getting started.